Throughout the course of human history, there have been certain men, the very words of whom impact their society in such a way as to inspire powerful transformation. Many such men must overcome great adversity and crisis on their way to greatness. Such a crisis occurred in 343 BC. Philip of Macedon had been ravaging the countries all around Athens, and the Athenians are very split as to whether or not costly military action is needed. The forum is in an uproar, filled with the sounds of thousands upon thousands of Athenians, all desperately attempting to be heard over all the others. And just like that, the forum is silent. For out of the crowd, Demosthenes has stood up. Demosthenes was a man of few words. He seldom spoke in public unless it was absolutely necessary. But when he did, people listened.
Many speeches have been delivered, men of Athens, about the wrongs that Philip has been committing. And yet I feel as if our interests have been so completely betrayed. Some have no thought for the future, while others make it their sole purpose that our city shall focus her attention on punishing her own citizens, while Philip shall be free to say and do whatever he pleases. If, apart from flattery, you are willing to hear something to your advantage, I am ready to speak. For although our situation is in every way deplorable, and though much has been sacrificed, if you choose to do your duty, all may yet be restored.
Demosthenes had not always been a great orator. He was born with a chronic stutter, orphaned at the age of 6, and was cheated out of his own inheritance. Left with nothing, Demosthenes filed a lawsuit against those who had taken his inheritance and devoted himself to learning the art of public speaking so that he could represent himself in the Athenian court. A young Demosthenes was often known to run down to the ocean side, to fill his mouth with rocks, and to project his voice as loudly and as clearly as he could, to be heard over the roaring of the waves. Over time, Demosthenes began to overcome his stutter. He was eventually able to project his voice with immense power, with immense authority.
In heaven's name, is there any intelligent man who would let words rather than deeds decide the question of who is at peace and who is at war with him? You would be wise if you defend yourselves now. But if you let this opportunity pass, you will not be able to defend yourselves even when you desire to. Neither the Greek nor the barbarian world is big enough for this fellow's ambition. The current crisis calls for earnest zeal, for wise counsel. While a vessel is safe, then is the time for a sailor to show his zeal and to ensure that the ship is not capsized. But when the sea has overwhelmed him, zeal is useless. Thus, you two Athenians must fight the battle of liberty.
Demosthenes spoke candidly. He blatantly stated the direness of the situation and openly accused his audience of their own inaction. But despite his harsh words, he knew his audience. Ever since he had defended himself in the trial over his inheritance, many Athenians had been asking Demosthenes to represent them in court, writing and speaking on their behalf. Demosthenes soon became famous for his ability to command a public platform. In fact, hundreds of years later, Cicero, a famous Roman orator, would later hail him as the perfect orator, with the words inter omnes unus excelliat, or he stands alone among all orators. The The Athenian people respected Demosthenes' opinion, even if it was stated with painful honesty.
We must lose no time in calling upon the rest of the Greeks. We must collect, exhort, and instruct the rest of the Greeks. That is the duty of this city. But if you think that Athens shall be saved by the Chaldeans or the Megareans, while you run away from your task, you are wrong. This task is for you. These are my views, and these are my proposals. And if they are carried out, I believe that our fortunes may yet be restored. If anyone has anything better to propose, let him speak and let him advise. But whatever you decide, I pray heaven it be to your advantage.
No one before Demosthenes had spoken with such power, with such conviction. His words rallied the Athenian people around him for nearly 30 years as they formed a grand alliance with the other city-states of ancient Greece against Philip of Macedon. Demosthenes has been remembered for many reasons. He was the world's first lawyer. He developed an oratorical training regimen still studied by today's best speakers, and yet nothing so cemented his place in history as the way he inspired people to action. Once a meek, sickly orphan with a chronic stutter, Demosthenes overcame his weaknesses and with the sheer power of his rhetoric caused an entire nation to throw aside passivity and fight for their freedom. We see this kind of leadership throughout history. Patrick Henry, Winston Churchill, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., all were able to inspire action, while dozens upon dozens of others never stirred a soul. A leader isn't defined simply by strength, by eloquence or bravery. What makes a leader great is their ability to mobilize others. In a speech to the British people, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Gordon Brown, once said, quote, "When Cicero spoke to the crowds in ancient Rome, people turned to each other and they would say, 'Great speech.' But when Demosthenes spoke to the crowds in ancient Athens, people turned to each other, they said, 'Let's march.'"